Welcome to Colombia! Today it's all about birds. Your hosts are Sarah, she's biologist with a PhD, and I'm Frank. I'm no biologist, we know PhD, but I also know some things about birds. Today we're hosted by the Café Nuestra Herencia. It's a beautiful tiny cafe in the middle of La Candelaria, and it's really worth a visit. We'll post you the link and the address. Go there. It has two floors, the entrance floor and the first floor, and you have painting. It's beautiful. The ceiling is quite low, so be careful if you're from Holland and 2 meters something tall, because then you will walk like this. But besides that, should be all fine. We will show you some pictures afterwards, that you have an idea of this really cool coffee, and also the coffee they serve. It's also very delicious. So Sarah, today everything about birds. Colombia is the country with most bird species in the world. Why is that?
Because we have a high diversity in ecosystems. So Colombia is divided, for example, in 5 natural regions: the Pacific, the Andean, the Orinoquian, the Caribbean, and the Amazonic region. Those natural regions are constituted by their geographical position in the country. So in the Pacific natural region, for example, we find the Pacific Ocean with the biggest part of the biogeographical Chocó forest. That is one of the most biodiverse forests in the world. It's a rainforest besides the Pacific Ocean. We have also islands like Malpelo, where you can find, besides birds, whales. And at the northern part of the Pacific region, we have the Darien. That is a very dense, huge forest that connects Panama with Colombia. It's very unexplored and rich places in birds in this country. It is placed in Antioquia. The other natural region is the Andean region. Here we have the Andean mountain range that comes from South America, divided into 3 mountain ranges: the western, central, and eastern. And it is in between those ranges we have 2 rivers, the Magdalena and the Cauca River. So we can find species from very low altitudinal range associated to aquatic ecosystems, and other ecosystems like dry forest, tropical dry forest, deserts. You have drastic ecosystem changes directed by the changes in elevation. So you can go from the dry forest near the rivers, the Magdalena or Cauca, for example, and go up until the Páramo. That is the ecosystem at the highest elevation before the perpetual snows. So that implies increasing diversity and endemisms that you don't find in other countries. The other region is the Caribbean region, when besides the ecosystems associated with the sea, like the mangroves, we have the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta. The Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, it's an isolated mountain range from the Andean range. Given this isolation, this is the place with the highest endemisms in the world, because when it's separated from the Andes, all the species became isolated there and started to speciate. So, and they didn't have the possibility to move to another regions, becoming very different from the species that you can find in the past in the Andes. So there, for example, you can find around 35 endemic species just in one place. That's very high. One that we share with Venezuela, that is the Orinoquia or Llanos Orientales. This is a huge savanna, sometimes compared with African savannas, but not so much because we have more water, because they are floated savannas and also have a complex network of rivers. So around those rivers we find from dense forests that are called riparian forests to the very dry or very flooded savanna in the middle of the llanura or plains. So that's another region which adds diversity to the country.
So, how many different bird species we have reported in Colombia?
We have around 1,935 species and around 96 or 95 endemic species in the global big day. Colombia occupied the first place in this contest. That is an international contest when everybody goes out to do bird watching just one day in a year. Sometimes in the year we have the visit of the migratory birds. There are around 195 species.
That cross through the country.
Yes, or sometimes they are coming here to have summer.
Oh, okay.
While in the north part of the continent they have winter.
Okay, so no birds from Europe.
It can be possible that, and it's reported that some birds trying to migrate here or there from Europe to Africa or Africa to Europe, for some reason arrive here because they're lost, but it's not the natural movement of birds.
Okay. Many people are particularly interested in hummingbirds.
Yes.
Do we have hummingbirds in Colombia?
Yes, we have a lot. Well, the neotropics and America is the only country with hummingbirds, and Colombia, because of the huge altitudinal changes.
And where do we find them in Colombia? Everywhere, or are there certain regions?
Fortunately, we can find them everywhere.
So from 0 until 5,500 meters, we can find hummingbirds in Colombia.
Yes. Well, 5,000, no, because it's snow.
No.
But before in the forest, in the paramo, you can find a lot of hummingbirds. For example, one of the most interesting hummingbirds we have here in Colombia is in the Andean region, in Manizales. You can find it at the Los Nevados Natural National Park, and they build a special platform to you to come here with your binoculars or your camera just to photograph this endemic hummingbird.
So you mentioned most endemic species we find in the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta. Where else in Colombia do they have many endemic species?
Well, altitudinal variation and the ecological changes that come with it is what determine the majority of endemisms in Colombia, not only for birds but for other species like orchids, for example. And the majority of endemic species in Colombia are found between 800 to 2,400 meters above sea level. So that includes the Sierra Nevada with the highest endemisms, but also includes the Serranía del Perijá at the north part of Colombia, limiting with Venezuela. The western side of the Western Andean mountain range, which corresponds to the biogeographic Chocó region and the Darien Gap, the Interandean valleys, and the central and eastern Andean mountain ranges, where you can find the Coffee region and the Colombian Massif in the south of the country. So those are the places with high endemisms for birds in Colombia.
And there is also some very interesting stuff going on in Colombia, because we have the peace treaty with the FARC since a couple of years, and some regions are now safe to travel to,
Yes.
like the Department of Meta, and they're focusing on birding tourism. So what can you explain a little more? What's going on, for example, in the region of Meta with providers of birding tourism and tourism?
The process in Meta has been very special because, as you said, they were highly affected by the violence. So they started to organize themselves into an association for avitourism. So now this is the second year they participate, for example, in the Global Big Day. Last year was their first time, and they, from the 20 position, they went directly to the fourth position, and probably this year they can get the third position among the richest bird departments in Colombia. And that's why they have a very high ecosystem turnover from the páramo to the plains in the Llanos Orientales. So it's an interesting process also because they are preparing kids to learn how to bird watching, and the biggest entrepreneurs of the area are improving their offers. So yes.
I like that region very much because in many places the very special birds are mostly very tiny birds. They hide in bushes and they're very difficult to find and to see, and when you see them they're like very nervous, jumping from one leaf to another. And in the Llanos, in El Meta, you have bigger birds, you have water birds, and you don't have so many trees in some areas, and it's much more easy to see them. And this is what I like.
In fact, you can find it in the Llanos, the biggest bird in Colombia, that is the Yabiru, a stork, and with a wing
Span?
span of 1 meter and 60 centimeters or
Oh,
2
wow.
meters.
Yeah.
So it's, and when you see it flying, it's like amazing, and it's known as in Spanish like the garzón soldado because it looks like a soldier in the middle of the savannah. The Llanos is the only place when you can see birds easy, but we have also the Caribbean with the dry forest. I remember you enjoyed that a lot because it was not dense, and the activity was easy also because you was able to watch the birds. But yes, there are some places like the Amazon. We had the opportunity to visit Vaupés, and we made a bird list when the 80% of the list was made just using the sounds, because it was impossible to watch the birds. So in those cases, you need a very good local guide specialized in bird songs.
So there will be much more to tell about birds in Colombia because it's just birding paradise. Colombia is still touristically a very young country. There are some operators that offer birding. In terms of guides in the regions, they're developing. There are not so many around yet, but as you mentioned, there are kids already interested in birds and training themselves up, learning about all this, and the regions themselves, they're also preparing for the future, focusing on birding tourism. If you're interested in birding, write us. We are more than happy to help. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe our channel, like our video, and if you liked our content, watch the next videos. Goodbye from Colombia.